a verdict in the Javier Rigetti murder trial. The jury has just found the 24-year-old guilty of capital murder.
And the sentencing phase will begin tomorrow at 10 in the morning. Rigetti is facing the death penalty, accused of brutally killing 15-year-old Alissa Ottremba in 2011.
A 15-year-old girl went to a classmate's house for a textbook and vanished without a trace. The police launched a massive investigation that led to a deeply disturbing discovery. In this video, we'll tell you what happened to Alissa Ottremba. Friends, subscribe to the channel, thank you. Alissa Ottremba was born on May 16, 1996, in the large American city of Fort Worth, Texas. Her father was in the military, which meant the family moved quite often. By the age of 15, Alissa had already lived in 5 different states, as well as in Germany and the United Kingdom. Despite this dynamic lifestyle, her parents had 2 more daughters, and from a young age, Alissa helped her mother care for her younger sisters. The girl loved to travel and explore new cities and countries. She was also passionate about drawing, swimming, and loved animals. In early 2011, her family moved to Las Vegas. Alissa, who was turning 15 that year, had been homeschooled for the past academic year. But at their new home, she enrolled in a local school. Even though she constantly had to change schools and was sometimes homeschooled, Alissa was a very bright student who quickly grasped any subject. Moreover, she made friends from her very first days at the new school. On Friday, September 2nd, there was a school holiday. To celebrate, a football game was held at her school, and Alissa participated in the marching band before it began. Afterwards, the girl planned to stop by a classmate's house to borrow a geometry textbook, which she needed to complete her homework for the upcoming week. Evening was approaching, and her mother was hesitant to let her go alone, but eventually agreed. At 6:38 p.m., Alissa texted her mother that she would be home by 7 and that her phone was about to die. After that, the girl went silent. Half an hour passed. Her mother, who was at work at the time, tried calling Alissa, but there was no answer. She then called her younger daughter, Megan. The girl said her sister still hadn't come home. The mother began to worry and decided to call all the friends Alissa might be with. Given that the family had moved to Las Vegas less than a year ago, the list was short, and none of them knew where she was. Her mother also called the classmate from whom Alissa was supposed to get the textbook. The boy, named Cody, said they never met up that evening. Something came up, and he had texted Alissa to let her know he couldn't give her the book that day. This only heightened the mother's anxiety. If Alissa never made it to her classmate's house, where had she been all this time? The girl always listened to her parents and had never gone out before without asking for permission. Megan tried to track her sister's iPhone location through a special app, but by then, it had already been turned off. As a result, at around 10 p.m., the worried mother decided to contact the police. Officers arrived at their home, interviewed the family, and began the search. Alissa's mother and sisters decided not to sit idly by. They printed out missing person flyers with the girl's photo. The police reconstructed Alissa's probable route and focused all their efforts on searching that area. Despite searching all through the night, they couldn't find her. The next day, the police continued to look for Alissa. At one point, her mother received a call from an acquaintance who told her that police had found someone's remains in an abandoned lot near their house. It was only 90 meters from Alissa's home, and the woman immediately went there. However, the area was already cordoned off with yellow tape. The police officers refused to let her near and couldn't confirm if it was Alissa. They only asked her to bring the girl's dental records to the station for identification. Soon, some details emerged. The remains that were found were badly damaged, making identification extremely difficult. Experts could only determine that the deceased was a girl between the ages of 13 and 18. Only after Alissa's mother brought in her dental records did specialists confirm that it was indeed her. After a more detailed examination, experts provided the police with a final report, and even seasoned detectives were shocked by what had been done to her. First, experts determined that the girl had been subjected to a brutal attack. They managed to retrieve the attacker's biological material, which was sent to a lab for DNA analysis. Second, Alissa had sustained numerous wounds from a sharp object. The perpetrator had also tried to conceal the evidence using fire, but this only resulted in making her unidentifiable without dental records. The lot where her remains were discovered is right next to a road, but it was impossible to see them from the street because the perpetrator had covered them with dirt and chosen a spot in the middle of a ditch. Furthermore, the girl was missing most of her clothing, which was never found nearby. Only her green sneaker lay a few meters away. Her smartphone was also gone. As soon as the details of this terrible event became public, the once quiet neighborhood was overcome with panic. People stopped letting their children go outside. realizing that the attacker could be a local resident who was still at large. Adding to the anxiety were police statements suggesting that the perpetrator might have a tendency for serial attacks. Given all this, the detectives were under immense pressure. Everyone wanted one thing: for this dangerous person to be put behind bars. The police first suspected Cody, the classmate from whom Alyssa planned to borrow the textbook. The boy was questioned, but he stated that he wasn't able to meet with her that day, and his alibi checked out. In the end, they were left with just one lead: the attacker's DNA sample. As soon as experts were able to isolate a profile, it was immediately uploaded to the FBI database, but there were no matches. Detectives then decided to examine the area where Alyssa might have been attacked more closely. The problem was that, at the time, they could only guess where the perpetrator had accosted her. They carefully inspected the territory along the route from the abandoned lot to her house and managed to find traces of blood on a nearby fence. Experts confirmed the blood belonged to Alyssa, but this didn't help the police. Meanwhile, they uncovered another disturbing fact. 5 months earlier, in the same area, another 15-year-old girl had been assaulted. An unknown attacker had ambushed her in a tunnel under a roadway. However, the girl's friends appeared in the tunnel shortly after, scaring the assailant away. Based on their testimony, the police created a composite sketch. He was described as a Hispanic male, between 17 and 19 years old. Unfortunately, he was never caught. Having hit a dead end, investigators decided to appeal to the public for information. They shared all the available details of the case and asked people to come forward with any information that could help the investigation. As is often the case, the police department received numerous tips. People shared their observations, theories, and other information they thought might be useful. Unfortunately, all of these leads went nowhere, all but one. The account of an 18-year-old woman immediately seemed significant to the police. Elizabeth Morales called them and said she knew the name of the person responsible. That evening, on September 2nd, Elizabeth went on a date with her boyfriend, Danny. However, they couldn't spend much time together because his best friend kept calling him all evening, but he wouldn't pick up. When the number of missed calls exceeded 50, he finally answered. After a brief conversation, the boyfriend told Elizabeth that he had to leave to help his friend. As a final unsettling remark, he added that, from the conversation, it sounded like his friend had done something terrible. At that moment, Elizabeth dismissed the comment as some kind of stupid joke, but when she saw the news about what happened to Alyssa the next day, it all made sense. Unfortunately, she didn't know her boyfriend's friend and only knew his first name, Javier. Of course, the police immediately tracked down and questioned Elizabeth's boyfriend. At first, Danny denied his girlfriend's story, claiming no such call had taken place. However, investigators pointedly told him that helping to cover up a serious crime would make him an accomplice, and in the worst-case scenario, he could face the highest penalty. Danny was clearly not prepared for that kind of responsibility, and he decided to tell the truth. That evening, his best friend, 19-year-old Javier Riggs, had indeed called him and asked him to come and help him right away. When they met, Javier stated that he had taken a girl's life and asked for a ride to a gas station. Danny drove him there. Javier filled a gas can with gasoline and asked to be taken to the empty lot, the very same one where Alyssa's remains would later be found. There, Javier asked for help getting rid of the evidence, but Danny refused to participate and left. However, he had no intention of going to the police to report his best friend. With all this information, on September 6th, the police began surveillance on Javier's house. They had no physical evidence against the young man, so they were hoping for something more substantial. For example, Javier might go somewhere to dispose of the weapon or some of Alyssa's belongings. That never happened, but the police did get another lead. Experts determined that the signal from Alyssa's phone was lost right near Javier's house, which, by the way, was located less than 2 kilometers from where the remains were found. After this, the decision was made to arrest the young man. His house was surrounded by a SWAT team in case Javier decided to resist, but to the detective's surprise, he calmly walked outside and surrendered without showing any emotion. What surprised them even more was that the young man confessed during the very first interrogation. The police knew that without a confession, this case had a high chance of falling apart in court, as there was no direct evidence against Javier. But he decided to confess, telling detectives the details of that fateful evening. According to the attacker, he noticed Alyssa on the street and followed her for a while. When she entered the tunnel under the highway, he decided to attack her, but didn't get the chance. He followed her for a little longer, then ran up to the girl, pulled out a knife, and forced her to go to that empty lot. There, he did the unthinkable. The The perpetrator also took her phone and almost all of her clothing. He then recounted how he called his friend and asked for a ride to the gas station. After returning to the scene, Javier attempted to burn the evidence, but was only partially successful. After covering everything with dirt, the young man calmly went home. Immediately after, Javier revealed that he had hidden Alyssa's belongings and the weapon in a sports bag in the ceiling of his house. Now, the police had indisputable evidence. He had also put his own clothes, which had the girl's blood on them, into the same bag. But the perpetrator's revelations didn't end there. He admitted to attacking 2 other girls in the same tunnel, including the incident from 5 months prior. Finally, Javier confessed that during a trip to Mexico a few months earlier, he had assaulted his own cousin. Thus, the police had enough evidence to put the dangerous criminal behind bars. In addition to all of the above, they obtained surveillance footage from the gas station where Javier bought the gasoline. This footage was also added to the case file. Unfortunately, as is often the case, the trial was severely delayed. The main hearings in his case began only in March 2017, almost 6 years after his arrest. The reason for this was typical bureaucracy and attempts by his lawyers to slow down the process as much as possible. Javier's lawyers argued that he had shown signs of a mental disorder since childhood, which caused uncontrollable outbursts of anger. On this basis, they asked the court to waive the ultimate penalty in favor of a life sentence. Javier's sisters also testified in court. They spoke about being raised by a tyrannical and cruel father who constantly beat his son and taught him that women should be subservient to men. They also pleaded for a life sentence instead of the state's harshest penalty. Before the verdict was announced, Javier gave a statement. He apologized to Alyssa's family and said he regretted what he had done, but this remorse did not help him. On March 21st, the court delivered its verdict. Javier was sentenced to the highest penalty. The man, who was 24 years old at the time, became the youngest person on death row in the state of Nevada. However, the American judicial system has its nuances. The execution of a sentence can be delayed for years or even decades. In Javier's case, he remains in prison to this day, awaiting a sentence that may never be carried out. State authorities are actively trying to abolish this measure, and he has a chance to escape his fate. To this day, Alyssa's parents are fighting for the sentence to be carried out. They believe the authorities do not have the right to spare the life of a person who callously took their daughter's life. It is currently unknown whether the sentence will be carried out. Sentences of this kind have not been executed since 2014, but they continue to be handed down. Notably, Javier's friend, who lent him money for gas and drove him to the gas station, received no punishment. He was not charged due to his cooperation with the investigation, even though he had no plans to report the incident to the police himself. It's possible that if his girlfriend hadn't told investigators everything, Javier might have gotten away with it. And in that case, it would have only been a matter of time before he attacked someone else. Share your opinion on this story in the comments, and don't forget to support the channel with a like if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.